Focus on the stuff you do best. One of the problems, in quotes, with small businesses, they tend to think that things are going to stay the same.
If you're running a business, the priority first and foremost is shareholders.
As you have conversations with people and you figure out what's the goal, what's the plan, what do you have in mind, right? What's the vision?
Everybody should be thinking about their exit plan, even if they've just started their company. I go back to a Stephen Covey quote, begin with the end in mind. And that's a big piece of every business person should be thinking about, where do I want this thing to end up?
People who are successful, they all do that. I don't mean like a 45-page PDF. They have a plan of where they're at, and it really nails exactly what Len was talking about. If you're starting a small business, people have a tendency to forget about kind of what's the plan, and it filters the decisions.
If you have employees, let's just go old school real quick. Old school mentality was, I'm the boss, do what I say. That does not work in the sales, in any culture anymore.
So this was our first PlanAssist Roundtable. And we just kind of did an introductory and touched on those three questions. Welcome to today's PlanAssist podcast. Today is our inaugural PlanAssist Roundtable podcast, where in our normal PlanAssist podcast, we kind of reminisce and talk about the past, kind of what would you give your younger selves advice? And today, one of the things that all three of us have noticed as we work with these small businesses, that they almost get stuck in the future of what does the future look like and what's happening. So today's is PlanAssist Roundtable, where we're actually going to talk about the future. What are the things that we know? I know it feels like you don't know very much, but in reality, there's a lot of things that we do know, and that's really what we're going to kind of talk through. We're going to hit on three big questions: is kind of what do we already know? What are people ignoring that they do know? And then what should we do about it? And the audience that we're really trying to engage with. So if you're listening to this, please add a note, give us an email, refer back to us. But when you look at the Small Business Administration numbers, in late 2024, there was almost 35 million small businesses registered with the SBA. And of that, 27 plus million of those were solopreneurs, solo LLC, solo incorporations. And that means there's an enormous number of people out there. Most of us on this call are solopreneurs, where we're out there trying to make decisions in bubbles and by ourselves. And so we thought we'd kind of just have a casual conversation around some of the things that we know. So with that, I'll kind of pass it to Harry. Spaight is one of the panels, so I'm going to have him introduce himself, and then we'll have Len Bruskiewitz talk a little bit about his role, etc. So with that, Harry.
All right, it's great to be here, Tim and Len. Is that Len? It's great to be here with you, Tim and Len. I'm very excited about this conversation. So my background real quick is I've been in sales and sales leadership and fractional sales leadership for about 30 years now, and author of the book Selling with Dignity. And I'm really all about helping people to grow their business through sales, which typically is a very ugly word for solopreneurs. They want to do all kinds of marketing and take the easy path, hopefully, that their business can grow with very little communication with strangers. And I think that is going to be a key of my portion of this conversation.
And it's going to be so good to hear from that, because again, as a solopreneur or a small business owner, it's really easy to get focused on the stuff we like to do. And sometimes sales isn't that top priority, but in order to build a business and to have a functioning organization, you have to sell in some form or fashion, right?
Absolutely. I was just talking to a guy recently who was a firefighter, and he is now in sales. And he said that the common traits that were used in firefighting, believe it or not, in communication, are huge in sales. So really, if you think about what you talked about, what we already know, there is a ton of great qualities that many already have that from their previous environment that translate perfectly into sales. But unfortunately, people get caught up with self-doubts and I'm not good enough and all the head trash that goes along with being a solopreneur that definitely carries over into sales, unfortunately.
Yeah, no question. All right, awesome. Thanks, Harry. Lynn?
Yeah, I'm Len Bruskiewitz. I had a long career, kind of like Harry, about the same amount of time that I spent in corporate, working for companies that serve small businesses as their customers. So I really have a passion for helping small businesses grow. And after moving out of corporate, I became a business coach. And my specific area of focus is around exit planning. So helping business owners get themselves and their companies ready to transition out of on their timeline and terms. And you may say, "Oh, Len, I'm not ready." Everybody should be thinking about their exit plan, even if they've just started their company. I go back to a Stephen Covey quote, begin with the end in mind.
Mm.
And that's a big piece of every business person should be thinking about, where do I want this thing to end up? Right? Where do I want it to go? And once you figure that out, then it's a lot easier to work your way back and figure out what you need to be doing today and tomorrow. So,
That's really
as
good.
much as, yeah. So really, this is all about, the parts of this are, yeah, focus on today, but have that big vision of, what's coming down the road, where you want to go.
That's awesome. And it's so important because people don't realize. I'll introduce myself and build on Lynn's comment. So I'm Tim Clifford, and I'm a certified financial planner. And my job for the majority of my career is help rich people stay rich. And I left the corporate world, similar to to Harry and Lynn, and started my own solopreneur financial planning practice here in Winter Garden, Florida. And one of the things that I learned really fast and early on was I needed to understand what is it that people who are successful do that non-successful people do. And I came up with three principles, which we'll talk about over the years and over time in this podcast constantly, but I'm not going to go into detail, but it's have a plan, be diversified, seek counsel. And the reason I kind of I found on those three principles was people who are successful, they all do that. And I don't mean like a 45-page PDF. They have a plan of where they're at, and it really nails exactly what Lynn was talking about. If you're starting a small business, people have a tendency to forget about kind of what's the plan, and it filters the decisions, right, Lynn? I mean, it's like
Yeah.
if you're making one decision and you're making it for next week, you might do this. But if you're actually making a decision based on 2030, you'll actually do something different.
Absolutely. And that's the kind of thinking that I hope every small business owner has. Because if you get into the minutia, you'll find you're spending your time on a lot of stuff that is causing you stress and not generating a lot of value.
And it comes to measure what matters. I mean, there was a really well-written book 25 years ago that really said measure what matters. And small businesses, me included, have a tendency to really struggle with what am I really measuring? And it's fun to feel like I'm making progress, but if it's a number that doesn't matter, it's irrelevant.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times, a lot of effort is put into stuff that just isn't, it's that 80-20 Pareto principle, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
And you got to have the wherewithal to step back and say, is the stuff I'm doing really important? And putting a dollar value on it is one way
Oh,
that I talk to people about, like, how much value is the thing you're doing today, worth? And if it's below what you want to be making, find somebody else to do it. Right.
so good.
That's kind of
Yeah.
how that should work.
Yeah. I mean, I totally love what you just said. Beginning with the end in mind is so common. No, I speak about that in sales frequently. What is the vision? What type of sales are you going to do? How are you going to be known? What's your business going to be known for? And, when you think about a personal brand, without getting into the weeds here, a great line from Jeff Bezos is what your brand is what people talk about when you're not in the room. And, if you think about where beginning with the end in mind, having the vision and doing the right things, and I constantly am using what is your time worth and why are you doing that? Because, I mean, doing dumb stuff is just, I mean, no offense to people like I do the dumb stuff as well. I do way too much
We
dumb
all do.
stuff and
No,
it's
it's
just,
easy.
it's useless, right? So learning to outsource, like I was becoming a Canva expert. I was becoming a YouTube expert. And I went, why am I spending so much time on doing stuff that I could literally pay someone $10 an hour for and not worry about it? So there's a lot that we could do that will help focus on the things that really matter. So beginning with the end in mind is great. And just recognizing that your time is extremely valuable in starting and running a small business. So great stuff. And I'll hand it back to you, Tim.
So to build on that exact point, though, when I started this podcast about almost a year ago now, and all the research I did said you just need to do 100 podcasts, never miss a week, and get 100 down in your channel so that at that 1 year mark, roughly, the algorithms will kick in. Okay, but until then, don't over stress, don't overthink about kind of what happens, day to day. Don't say, oh, only, 20 people looked at my YouTube, it's not successful. That's not the point, because if 20 people asked me to come out and do a speech, I would definitely go do that, right? I mean, so you're kind of comparing yourself to a number. But what I wanted to kind of hit on is this: when I started the editing, I literally am pretty good with computers, like almost too good, right? Because I have a tendency to try to do my own stuff. And early on, I said, if I'm going to get to 100 of these, I have to get it set up so that I don't do anything but the podcast. And I had to interview, I used Fiverr and then Upworks, et cetera. So I'm, the gig economy is for sure alive and well if you're good at kind of how to find it. And I bumped into this group over in Bangladesh whose
skills of editing podcasts. If I can speak on that, just help you out a little bit, because what you've done with your podcast, Tim, is you made it extremely professional looking and sounding without necessarily having to learn everything to do that. Because the time it takes to learn that and to become great at it, I mean, just think about the whole 10,000 hour rule. If we had to become great at everything we do, there's not enough time in our lives to really do that. So finding people that you can be part of the team, and I use offshore as well, to help me to do the things that I need to get done so I can focus on the stuff that really matters.
Exactly. And the group that I found, and so it's Framecraft. So I bumped into these, there's 3 or 4 of them that do these podcasts for me. And we literally do a monthly call where I talk about what I'm trying to do and then I send it. But my point becomes is with this group, I have a process in place where I do the video, then I put it into a folder, then they upload it, then they do the editing, then I send it to Heather and she puts it into the YouTube channel. We have to get good at those steps, I guess is what I was just trying to summarize. Is once you get the process in place and you do it over and over again in sales, it'll work. It's just you have to do enough of it.
Yeah, 100%. I'm thinking with what you just said, is having a team with you so you can focus on the important things.
Yeah.
So in business, it is, I mean, everybody needs sales. Otherwise, it becomes just a very expensive hobby. And, no one wants to just blow through thousands and thousands of dollars just to say, I had 17 people watch my video instead of 3. But that's really what happens, unfortunately. So as you have conversations with people and you figure out what's the goal, what's the plan, what do you have in mind, right? What's the vision?
Yeah.
And when you do all that, you say, well, how do we get from where we are today to there? And the number one thing I think is you need to speak with people who are your ideal client. And that's the answer. If you're not doing that, then everything else, unless you're building an online business, which is like an online store, maybe that's a little bit different. But if your business is about consulting, or there are people that are going to be buying your stuff from you, then you need to be having conversations, just like you do, Tim. You and I had conversations, and it's like, based on what your brand is, even though I didn't really know you, I could tell what this guy knows his stuff. He's not pushy. He cares about people. So I'm putting all this together. So when I had a question, I went, yeah, Tim's my guy. Tim's the guy that knows this stuff. So how can we become the guy or the gal that is known for this aspect of your business that you need to work with? What's your thought on that, Tim?
What's yours, Len? You take it, pick that up.
Well, I think what you hit on is a couple really good points. In a lot of my work with clients, what I talk about is focus on the stuff you do best, right? That's what, what you're really good at, what you're the guy or the gal in, do that and figure out how to let somebody else do everything else, right? But Tim, to go back to one of your points, another key piece of of being prepared to exit is having your processes documented, right? If every month it would just be this random act for you to put a file someplace, and maybe that team knows where to get it, maybe they don't, right? But you basically said, we're going to do step A, then step B, then step C, then now you can get yourself out of there, right? So the documenting the processes of how your business work are huge for a number of reasons. One, it just makes your business work better, but secondly, it becomes so less dependent on you as the owner. And owner dependence is the single biggest thing that I run up against in my practice. Is business owners are too important. They're too in the weeds. And so they can't step back, and nobody wants to buy that, right? Nobody wants to buy the owner. They want to buy a business that they can run on a turnkey basis. So I think it really incorporates what both of you have been talking about.
So,
Right.
so we're going to shift gears and change the subject, but I want to close this one out. A lot of solopreneurs don't realize it, and it's a little bit insulting for some of them, which I don't understand why. But what they've actually done is built a business, right, Len? I mean, a job.
A
They've
job.
actually
Yeah.
built a job, right? They haven't built a business, and there's a big difference between those 2 points.
Yeah, I mean, it's some of it is mindset. I mean, I just saw someone recently post on LinkedIn that they have a business and they said, I'm self-employed. So right there, you're viewing it as a job. I mean, I've done this. I had my own
No, I have
business,
too.
right? Yeah, where it's like, oh, I'm self-employed. Well, change that. I mean, that's a simple mindset thing, and say, I am an entrepreneur and I'm building something versus I am a job for hiring.
Exactly. And then I just want to tell one very quick story that really changed the way I sell. So Harry, you can just touch on this, and then we're going to get into question 1 of things we already know. But before I do that, this was kind of an introduction to the 3 of us, and we've done. I think that people now have a sense of kind of what we're going to touch on over time, right? So we're going to do these types of this podcast periodically, and sometimes we'll even bring in a guest, so there'll be four of us. But the one thing I want to share is my brother went to he started this sign business from scratch, right? So like a lot of people, you leave corporate and start your own business, and he started it literally from zero. And early on in the process, he went to this sign conference in New York, and I'll never forget it because when he came back, he said, I said, what did you take away from that? He goes, the number one thing I came back with is don't sell, be a consultant. And he goes, I want to be the sign guy in the city that I am, and I want to be the consultant. I'm not selling a sign. I want to give them consultation and expertise, and then the sign will sell itself, right? Once people understand, well, what kind of paint do you put on the side of that wall? What kind of sign should go there? What's actually legal to go there? And what are you going to get approved? Those kinds of conversations have to happen before the sale, and you need to position yourself as an expert before you start selling a product or service.
Amen. It's funny. At one time in my life, years ago, I thought about getting a sign business, and I went to Chicago and learned all about the sign industry. And I said, you know what, this isn't for me right now in this portion of my life. But looking back, maybe that wasn't the best decision I made. Maybe it was. But really, the ones that succeed in the sign business are doing just as your brother described. And that's true in sales. It's like you have to have more than product knowledge because people will ask for something and then if you just say, yes, I can get that for you without digging deeper, what is the vision? What's the goal here? What do you have in mind with the sign, right? So that the sign should be something about bringing more customers to your location,
Yeah, no, that's
to
right.
your business, right? But if you can't explain that and ask deeper questions, you're going to be a commodity. And there's very little, you're always going to be the lowest price on the block if that's what you are going to end up doing.
It's expertise, right? So
Yeah,
we're using sign as the example, but it's expertise in the business. Do you agree
exactly.
with that, Lynn?
Yeah, absolutely. I would argue, your brother wasn't selling signs. Your brother was selling greater customer acquisition methodology, right? That's what he was selling. It wasn't the
Nice.
physical sign, right? And
Yeah.
it's getting to the client doesn't care about the sign. The client wants more customers coming in the door, right? So that's the problem you're solving, not the physical piece of advertising.
Yeah, it was a real
Absolutely.
aha for me. So, okay, so let's shift gears. So now everyone's kind of had an introduction of us, and we've had a nice conversation. So I want to shift gears to the whole podcast as we build this out over time is going to be around three questions. The first question is, what are things we already know? The second question is what are people ignoring? And the third question is what should we do about it? And we just talked generally about those three. So it wasn't like we went off topic. We just talked in high level generality. Now, what I'd like to do is kind of dig in on that very first question. And the reason that we're coming on to this first question is, and I'll be curious to see especially with you, Len, because you run into like these businesses that are trying to build it is I run into people all the time that are frozen with things they don't feel like they know, when really, if you step back and think about the stuff you do know, it's incredible, right? I mean, like we don't know who's going to be the president next in 5 years, but we do know some things.
Yeah, and where I come into this is I do get a lot of, well, we've always done it this way, right? That's
Oh, right.
something I combat. I'm sure both of you have to deal with that all the time, right? The stuck in their ways. And so where I come at that is, don't view a test of something new as a win or a loss. It's always, what have I learned? The whole idea that inevitably you're not going to succeed wildly, probably on every single thing you try. But if you can at least learn something every new test you make, that's the real value. And what most business books fail to notice or fail to talk about is it's 1,000 things that you do right to get to the big win. There's not that one silver bullet, right? So I think, so to answer the question more succinctly, right? Some things, right? You have this universe. Now step outside that. Try something new. What did you learn from that? Did that make you change your initial thoughts, or did it confirm what you already thought? So that's how I come at this is, done is better than perfect, right?
Mm.
It's just try things. Most things are not going to completely destroy your business, right? But they could be on the path to make it a lot better. So, have that curiosity, but always base it on what you know, right? Don't forget that experience is valuable, but leverage what you already know, and then step beyond, step beyond, step beyond to really make
Well,
progress.
well, as an example, as a financial advisor, I'll use me as an example based on there are some things that I know for sure as a financial advisor. Clients, there's a certain number of clients that are going to want to meet with a financial advisor. There's some that'll just never, they're do-it-yourselfers, and there's some that will just, kind of pass it to kind of trust services. But then there's this group in the middle that are going to want to meet with. I know that, right? So that's an I know. This goes to your point about try stuff. That means that I need to go find not the do-it-yourselfers. Don't spend time with that group. Kind of go to Harry's point. That's not a group that's ever going to want to meet with me. But the group that does want to meet with me, then try things to reach out and engage that group. What are ways to meet with that group? And it might be, maybe it is seminars, but maybe it's Zoom calls, maybe it's open houses, maybe whatever those things are. Try them where it doesn't cost lots of money, but do them, right? I mean, and I think that's the piece that people get frozen on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll turn this over to Harry, but you're absolutely right. Don't go fishing in the wrong pond, right? You need the
Oh,
right
that's
the right bait and the right pond, and I'm sure Harry can talk to this more eloquently than I can. But yeah, focus on the people that are going to be potential customers. You don't care about views from the do-it-yourselfers, right? So I'll turn it over to Harry. I'm sure
and
he's got
and
insights
and
here.
then
That's great.
and then before I turn it to Harry, I want to kind of reiterate that expertise piece, right? So it's not this, okay, let's go find people that meet. Again, going back to my example, I first have to add value and show that I actually know what I'm talking about before I say here's the account application, right? I have to have 2, 3, 4 conversations. If I start selling too early about trying to get them to take action, what will happen, especially in today's world, is you'll just get shut out. And kind of, I want to build on that kind of, what do we know, Harry?
Oh my goodness. Where do I start? This is so good. Len, 100% agree with what you just described. And Tim, knowing the potential people out there, right? The people who are definitely looking for someone people who are a mix, and then there are people that are just completely do-it-yourselfers. When you figure out really who are the people I need to be speaking with, that is something that it's not hard to figure out. It's like, do I want to be calling on, and I say this all the time, do you want to be speaking to people, no offense, that have no money and you're just educating them? Because that is a volunteer work, and you might as well open up a nonprofit and never expect to make a living or to earn what you are hoping to earn
And
in
where
your
there's
business.
tons of businesses that fall in that category, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you and I, we run into those all the, especially at 1 Million Cup.
Yeah,
Half that group I love that group. I mean, so I'm not trying to be mean, but it is a whole bunch of people talking to a lot of people that will never buy.
exactly. Right. So, like an example is I've gone to a million network events. I ask a question when I'm speaking. I'll ask a question, who here would like to sell something today? Raise their hand. Everybody raises their hand. What's the
Exactly.
next question I ask? Who here is looking to buy something today? No hands go up. And then I simply ask, where's the disconnect? If we're here to sell, we're in the wrong place. So we have to have conversations with people who have a problem, who can pay to have the problem solved, and who want the problem solved. And if they don't fit into those simple categories, let alone what a whole sales process is, and like what you said, Tim, if you come across smelling like you're trying to sell something, commission breath is what we refer to it as.
Oh, I've
People are
never heard
going,
that. That's good.
people are going to just block you. I'll give you an example. I was talking to a person in your space, Tim, financial planner, asked me a couple of questions, and boom, he had answers for me. Not, not get to know me. I mean, this is a huge investment, right? The stuff you sell, pretty big investment last time I checked, right? You're responsible for not just a few $100, not a few thousand, but tens of, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. That is not a one or two conversation sale. When you look at the lifetime value of a customer or a client, then you have to say, is this person I mean, no offense to anybody, but there's only a limited amount of time in the day. And if we're spending it with people who are nice, people who are likable, that's when I'm in sales leadership role, I'm saying you're going the path of least resistance, because those people will talk to you all day and they will never buy anything. And you're going to feel like Len said, you're going to feel like you're accomplishing something, but you're caught in a trap that is path of least resistance. You're not trying anything new. You're not getting out of the comfort zone and talking to people that really matter to your business. What's your thought on that?
So, no, I'm dead on. I totally agree 100%. And I actually want to even shift it one step further. So back to the sales piece. So we've had that whole conversation. How do we debate? Here's something else that small businesses know. They know they need to meet with people that meet this criteria or fall into our thing. But here's something else they know. They have to run their books, right? I mean, how many people, like back to positioning your business for when you get ready to sell it? I've had dozens and dozens of conversations with small businesses that that they don't even have bookkeeping. They don't even hardly know how to read a balance sheet or an income statement. So part of the process of positioning your business is the holistic. And the best way I can describe it, and I'd love to hear your kind of expand on this, Len, is when I was in corporate America, I had to be good at one thing. Okay. I didn't have to be great. I could still keep my job if I was good. Okay. But everything else, I could go to HR, I could go to legal, I could go to marketing. I had a bunch of kind of different departments that would kind of push back on me when I tried to go stuff, but they'd also help with all this stuff. Once I went out on my own, I suddenly realized I couldn't just be good at one thing. I had to be excellent, right? I had to be in the top 10% minimum, but more like the top 2 or 3% in whatever I was doing. But I had to be good at a bunch of other stuff, right? And that mindset really changed my business for looking forward with kind of what am I doing? And even when I'm engaging with clients, I don't ever try to sell them something in the first couple of meetings. Even when they're going down the path of I want to do something, I'm like, no. Starts with an introduction, discovery conversation. We're just going to talk for an hour or two a couple times before we even start talking about what are we doing, right? And that goes to that step of understanding the business. Can you expand on, because I hit on a bunch of stuff there, Lynn.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the classic story of I opened a bakery because I love to bake, right? But baking is about this big of a percentage of running a bakery, right? There's ordering and there's the accounting and the cleanup and all those other things, right? And what ends up happening with most business owners is they spend a lot less time on the things that they're really passionate about and the things that they're really good at because they have to do all those other things. So this is where it gets to and yeah, I'm going to talk. There are three things that keep businesses from selling, right? When you get to that point, they're relevant here. One is bad accounting, bad process, right? Like the buyer comes in and they're like, yeah, like I don't trust any of this, right? So that's one piece. The second piece I've already talked about, the owner dependence, right? If everything runs through the owner, that business is not saleable, right? So those are two of the big things that if you know that those are going to be issues, you need to solve them now because they're not things you can fix the day before you get the wire transfer in for somebody buying your company. So those are things, and it gets back to what we talked about earlier. Focus on the stuff you're really good at and find other people to do the other things, right? And you think, oh, I can't afford it. But again, if what you're really supposed to be doing is having conversations with people who are willing to buy, kind of everything else you should figure out how to have somebody else do it because it's not what you're the best at and it's not ultimately what's going to drive revenue for your company. So that's my take is know what you're really good at and spend as much of your time doing that and just make sure that somebody else or some process is taking care of the rest. And so that's where, when you talk about what do we already know, AI is one of those things that we already know. And that is a piece that can do some of those other things for you. So I don't want to go too deep in that one, but it's definitely, the main point is focus on the stuff you're really good at because that's how you're going to grow. To be honest with you, you're not going to grow by being a better accountant.
But the biggest challenge is you say, okay, I'm not going to sell my business. That's okay. But you still have to have processes in place. Like the best example is the reason that business is worth money if you have the processes in place, an email list, a CRM system, what's my biggest top 10 clients, where's my clients live. Those are things that a lot of businesses seem to think aren't that important, but they are to a buyer. And I would argue that they got to set aside their egos and their borderline narcissism, where they think they kind of know what they're doing. When in reality, if you would just step back and said, well, why is a business to buy my business? They need to know these 5, 6, 7, 10 things. The reason is because they know the business is going to survive. That if you're not doing those things, you're going to be one of the statistics of businesses going out of business.
Yeah. And again, forget about the end game for a second, right? Don't care. Maybe you're never going to sell your business, although you're going to leave it at some point. But
Right.
this is all about de-stressing you today, right? And making your business more profitable today. This isn't about some pie in the sky thing 10 years from now. This is about if you configure the processes and understand your business metrics and KPIs, you're going to be a happier business owner and a more profitable business owner in the short term. So this isn't just about the future, right? This is about running your business today.
Yeah, that's a great point. The thought that occurred to me here while you're speaking is that people just want to survive and grow. And a lot of these, I mean, if you look at the businesses that fail, the percentages of failure is just ridiculously high. And having a conversation with you, Len, is just super valuable, is to put processes in place, take the load off, do the right things with your time, build the systems around you, and you're going to do a lot better. Then you might think, I definitely agree that you want to have the vision of what's the end in mind. But in the meantime, if you're just starting out a couple of years in, I mean, Tim and you and I have had this conversation. You don't go from a job where you just show up, right? Everything is easy when you just show up. You're in a system, you're in a process that's going to lead you to a paycheck every week. In business, you've got to have some kind of process or processes that allow you to get paid. And the more you put this into a system, then the money starts to flow in, and then the whole thing gets to be a lot better. And you don't have to worry about being one of the 50% of businesses that fail in the first couple of years, or whatever that number is lately.
Yeah. So on the things people ignore, if someone sits down with you, Lynn, and says, okay, here's my business. I've been in business for 5 years or 7 years. I'm not really looking to sell it. What would kind of the investment in both time, money's probably a hard one to predict, but at least time. What do you think that the investment in time would be for someone to sit down with you or someone like you and kind of get their arms around the top, say, five things? These are the things they're ignoring, right? We know we need them, and now why we're ignoring these. What are those five things?
Yeah, it really would be dependent, right? It's hard to say
Okay.
unequivocally, right? But what it's typically going to be is a lot of asking questions, right? I'm not gonna solve anything up front. So a lot of this is over, hour-long conversations every week. Help me understand your business. What are the things that are driving you crazy? What are your goals, right? And just kind of making sure those are all in alignment. And a lot of that is around, what do you spend your time on, right? And I can pretty quickly tell if business owners are honest with me. I can pretty quickly tell whether they're spending time on the most important stuff or on the trivial many. They say, the important few or the trivial many. So it really is a process of understanding their goals, understanding what they're doing today and what they're spending their time on, and then how open are they to doing some of the stuff we talked about earlier, taking some, trying some new things, delegating things to others, whether again that's a staff internally or external. So it's all about just getting them to think differently. And one of the key points of, and I'm sure anybody, Harry, could talk to this as well, and you, Tim, is most of the time the business owner knows the right answer. They kind of in their gut they know what they should be doing,
Yeah.
but a lot of times they need just that sounding board, some external third party who's got some experience, beyond theirs, just to probe on it. But ultimately, I'm not telling them what to do. They know what to do. They just need a little bit of a nudge to say, yeah, you're right. I'm going with my gut, because your gut's usually right. Right. So I'd love your take on that, of whether you agree or disagree.
What's yours, Harry?
Oh, 100%. I am so, yeah, agree, times 10. If you ask people, like, let's go back to the bakery. People start a business because they are really good at many, not everyone, but they're really good at the job. So then they say, well, why am I getting paid X when I could be getting paid so much more if I had my own business? And they want to do the thing. So I've gone into businesses where someone will say, well, that's why I'm working with you. So you do the thing. But so I do the sales. But that's not the answer. I mean, in my opinion, the leader of the company needs to be the top salesperson for the company as well. And if they shrink back, and they'll typically will say, well, I need to be out in front of people, but that's not where I'm good at. This is where what you just said, Len, was trying new things and getting out of that comfort zone and saying, look, I need to be speaking with people. I'm great with flour and dough in my hands and making pastries, but I've got to be, people are buying when they come in, or wherever I'm selling to, if I'm selling to restaurants or whatever, they're buying you. They can get the stuff from anyone, but they're buying you. And those are the skill sets that need to be developed. And, you can say, well, what do you think will help us to get from where you are today to where you want to be? And I'm willing to bet they're going to say, I need to talk to more people, or I need to be better. I need to get out more, those types of answers. And what's holding us back is the next thing. And it's like, I'm not comfortable with it. So how do we get comfortable? Right? You
Yeah.
get comfortable by doing.
Okay, well, I'm going to be a little more direct, so someone listening to this might get wound up a little bit on this. But I was so fortunate that early in my career, I went to work at Schwab, and when I went to work there in 1990, we had 40 branches, so Chuck still ran the company. Okay, so when we go to branch manager meetings, Chuck was running the branch manager meetings. Okay, so one of the things that I learned early in that process was the order in which you're making decisions is very, very important. Okay. And he would remind us regularly. And it goes like this. If you're running a business, The priority first and foremost is shareholders. Okay, number one, the business has to make money. You have to have balance sheets. You have to have income. You have to have a company that makes money. There's no excuse for running a business that's not making money, period. That's your main reason for being in business. And shareholders, whether that's you or someone else outside of you, is your number one priority, period. So when you're making decisions, that is number one. Number two is your clients. That is your second priority. So it was very, very clear that we had to grow clients, but we had to understand what our clients needed, what they were, add value, et cetera. And then number three is employees. And what happens in a small business over and over again is they get those flipped. They have a tendency to put too much emphasis on the employees, too much emphasis, and they almost always forget about customers. I mean, how many businesses have you walked into, Len, where there's no conversation about the customers? That there's no, it's my favorite analogy with Bezos is in every single Amazon meeting where I don't know if they still do it, but when Bezos ran it, he had an empty chair in every meeting, and that empty chair was the customer. And he would remind everyone, number one is customer, number two is value, number one is shareholders, number two is customers, number three is employees. And we have this weird, when you're running a business, you almost become friends with your employees, and you don't have that problem in corporate America. So those of us who grew up in corporate America, that just wasn't an issue for us because we really didn't make friends. You know what I mean? And that sounds cold and mean, but I mean, I don't have any friends from my corporate America days, right? I mean, I had acquaintances and I had, business relationships, but they weren't friends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I agree. I think there needs to be balance, right?
Mm.
Between those three, because you can get into weird situations where doing one too much can hurt the other two. But I agree with you that those are the priorities, and you have to be focused on them, especially as a business owner, because again, if if you're not making enough money, you're ultimately going to fail your customers and your employees, right? So I get it. If you're losing money, the whole enterprise goes away, and then you can forget about the other two constituents. So I agree with you. I just think that you really have to keep them in balance, because if you treat your employees like garbage, they're going to treat customers like garbage, and so it's a balance. But I completely am on board that those are the things you need to care about as a business owner every
And,
single day.
and it just expand on that and even push back a little bit on it. The balance, that's the art. I would argue it's not balance. I would argue that's the art. It goes shareholders, clients, employees, and yeah, you have to pay attention to all three of those. But the priorities, what I just laid out, and why you see some businesses just go through the roof, is every decision goes through that decision tree. You obviously can't grow, you can't serve customers if employees are all sideways and not good and not trained and all that stuff. So your employees are an important part of the process, but they're part of the process to serve the customers. And the customers are there to actually serve the business to make money, right? And so I would argue that's a piece that if you're listening to this, people can disagree with me on it, but I can tell you, as someone who's spent my life managing and investing in companies, when I get on these investment calls and I hear the C-suite start talking about the employees, I sell the company. I'm out. You got your priorities wrong. Now, it doesn't mean they can't mention employees, right? But they better mention them in the right framework, right? That's the art of the process, is the best way I can describe it, right? Employees are incredibly important. Like, I loved my decade at Schwab. We were, I mean, it was funner than heck, and we enjoyed it, but we were never ever we never believed that if the company started getting in trouble, that he would think about us first. He'd think about shareholders, clients, employees.
Well, this is definitely an interesting conversation. Years ago, there was a sign on the door where I worked in corporate America that said exactly what this was, but they lost sight of the customer.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think, right, so yes, they were right, and I agree, but that balance is you have to do it once you have the customer, you have to do the right thing. And that sometimes that got lost with shareholders first. But in a small business, like, so just my thought here is You have to do what is good for your business. Sometimes we have to fire the customer because that's good for our business. And,
Yeah.
squeaky wheel that costs us money. Yeah, and I get you're going to do the right thing. You're going to let them go kindly. So that's just my 2 cents. I see the value in what you're saying. It just can't be lost that you stop doing the right thing. But you got to figure out what the right thing
Right.
is, right? And so if you're losing money, you got a squeaky wheel, you got in over your head, and you're just going to have the conversation. This isn't working out like I thought it was. We have to figure out a way to part ways here, and that's just the way it is, right? It's just you have to protect the company. Otherwise, there is no company.
Exactly. And I don't
Yeah.
want to overthink it. I don't want to overemphasize that there's not balance. My comment more is exactly what you just said, Harry, that it's not that there's not balance. So I'm not disagreeing that balance exists. What I'm trying to help people understand that the art of those three pieces of running a business is the part that is the magic, and you have to get good at all three of them, right? You have to be really good at all three, and you can't just get rid of obviously employees because they serve customers. You can't get rid of customers because they're part of the business. I'm not making a case that you just turn into this, let's just go make money at all costs, because if you do that, you're going to blow up too, because now you've lost the art of two and three.
Absolutely. And that's where I use the term balance, right? It's that
Yeah, no,
you
right.
can't do one without
All three.
contemplating the effect on the others. Yeah.
But those are kind of the three pieces that back to the thing that people are ignoring are the piece that people need to start thinking through. And that's probably not going to happen in 1 hour session. And it's going to be over the course of time, just constant events happen. How are we prioritizing, and how are we sending them through that decision tree, and where does that go to, right? I mean, so then you start kind of thinking about it. And to finish up the call, because we're coming up on the hour, that last question, this is a perfect transition to that last question, is kind of, what should we do, kind of about it. I think it is come up with a plan, sit down with someone, either Len or someone like that, and kind of outside that's totally unbiased, right? And says, okay, here's the stuff you need to do. And then you'd plug in someone like Harry, because now you kind of know where you're going, and then take it to the next level. And then you'd plug in someone like me to help invest the money after you've made it, right? That's almost the order.
Yeah, I would agree. And it comes back to that whole idea of, in order to make change, you got to have a pain that's painful enough. And, taking that first step is something that you're willing to do. Otherwise, if the pain isn't great enough, and if you're not willing, if you don't have the vision and you're not willing to take the first step, if you think about it as an equation, A times B times C, if any of those are zero, you're not going to change, right? If the problem isn't big enough, if you don't have the vision, and if you're not willing to take the first step, any of those, then change isn't going to happen. But it's really required if you want to, evolve the business and grow the business. You got to be willing to take what you know, take some risks, and learn as you go.
And how often, when you sit down with these small businesses, does a person, when they fast forward kind of back to what we know, there's some stuff that you can look at a business and say, if you don't make change 5 years from now, you're going to be out of business. I mean, but
Yeah,
yet they don't kind of see that.
yeah, it definitely happens, and it's because, again, one of the problems, in quotes, with small businesses, they tend to think that things are going to stay the same. They think their health is going to be the same. They think the sales methodologies they've used are going to continue to work, the channels they sell through. And history tells us that tends not to happen, right? So I think the blinders are that business owners think, if I just keep doing the same thing and maybe I do it a little bit better, I'm gonna end up fine. And that's kind of the reality is, most of those things are going to change. And so you got to be ready to adapt to them.
And have a team of people around to help you kind of prioritize those changes and balance, right? It does go to balance, but that balance is the art of success or failure.
Agreed.
What do you have to finish on, Harry, as kind of what people should be doing?
Yeah, I 100% agree with where this conversation is going with what Len just said, is that people will say things like, it's getting harder out there. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but yeah, it's getting harder out there. And what's the reason? Things are getting harder out there. There's competition. There might be some economical reasons, but doing the same thing, expecting different results, I don't think is the answer. Based on what I've read over the years and what I've experienced myself, you have to keep growing. You have to, like, I mean, Len keeps nailing it. You have to be willing to try new things. That's across the board. I mean, if you have employees, let's just go old school real quick. Old school mentality was I'm the boss, do what I say. That does not work in a sales in any culture anymore, right? People are not looking for that. They did at one time. I mean, that's why factories were loaded with people that were willing to work the night shift, right? Do what you tell me to do, I'll do it. But in today's world, people are looking for a lot more. They're looking for team, they're looking for a culture, they're looking for a better lifestyle. We got to be willing to adapt with whatever the role that we're speaking with, right? If the clients are looking for something different, employees are looking for something different. Shareholders, I'm not sure they're looking for something different. They're still looking to be profitable, but I think you get the idea. So being willing to adapt, try new things, that works across the board, in my opinion.
That's awesome. So I'll kind of go around, everyone kind of summarize, and I'll start with the summarization of this. So this was our first PlanAssist Roundtable, and we just kind of did an introductory and touched on those three questions. I think as we build on this, what we'll do is we'll share a particular problem because we kind of hit on all three of them. But I think what would add value is to do an hour around something specific, like AI as an example. How are you adopting AI? And we have just a conversation still focused on the three questions. What do we know? I mean, so kind of that process, but we could focus it around, I'm getting ready to sell my business specifically. And we just spend kind of an hour talking about, okay, here's the kind of stuff they're going to look at versus the generalization. I think that's where we kind of go with this. If you guys are up for that, if you think about what do you think? Start with Len. Len, what do you
Yeah.
think about?
Yeah, I think a deep dive into some some real world examples would be a great way to make this as relevant as possible for everybody who's listening. Just and it really is that important. Like you know more than you think, but there is stuff you don't know, and the only way to go about it is to start trying some new stuff. Right? Don't base it on complete random stuff, but base it on things that are well understood and grow from there. So
Yep.
that's my take is, yeah, I think coming with some more concrete examples and kind of walking through the flow of that would be awesome.
And I think what I'm thinking, and then Harry, jump in here and kind of finish this up is what I'm thinking, like even the next call is start with what does a functioning small business look like? A business doing $1 million a year, what would be the key metrics? Like revenue per employee, what's the balance sheet look like? What's the income statement look like? What's the sales process? Do they have a CRM? But I almost think of like these 10 or 15 things, kind of walking through that with a client and giving them a visualization of what a competent functioning business would actually look like. And then that would give them some points about, okay, well, I don't have that or I don't have that. What do you think of that, Harry?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we're here to help and get people to actually take something valuable away from this conversation. Yeah, I'm completely into that. And using AI these days, some people are afraid of it, but the world will pass us by, in my opinion. It's sort of like, I don't want to use a computer 30 years ago. I've got everything on paper. I'm great on paper. Well, that's probably not the best answer anymore. What about a fire or flood or something? Then it's like everything became available on the internet. And so that changed. Now it's, well, how do we take advantage of this incredible tool that's out there and saying I'll learn it someday or it's not that important it's a huge, huge miss, especially on the sales side of things. So I'm absolutely excited about taking a little deeper dive into that.
I and I think what we do the next call is we deep dive on what a functioning, competent, good business looks like, and then we do the AI conversation. I think if we start with the AI conversation, you end up kind of missing the point about what we touched on early in the call is you kind of got to do everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of goes to my point about, yeah, I'm a financial advisor, so I have a tendency to focus too much on shareholders, but you still got to be good at clients. You still got to be good at employees, right? To your point, Lynn.
Agreed.
So, all right, well, that sounds good. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Lynn and Harry, for your input. And anyone that's listening, if you want to add some comments, what we need to do better or what you liked or didn't like, we're totally open to your feedback and input.
Absolutely. Great stuff, Tim
Thanks again.
and Len.